All right, I'm Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to a Common Solution workshop. So I want to focus at the beginning is 4 words: investigation, decision, action, results. Investigation, decision, action, results. So I'll give you a little analogy. Let's say I go for a drive up in the mountains and I pull off, I'm in the middle of nowhere. That's where I like to go. And my car breaks down. I get, I get out of the car, walk around, come back to the car and put the keys in ignition. It's just like click, 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 it won't start. So I need to go on this investigation and to discover what the problem is. And I open up the hood and I play around with the wires. I look at the starter, I look at the alternator. After a firm investigation, I come to the conclusion that the battery is dead. So do I stand there for 30 years with hope that one day this car is just going to miraculously start? Do I put air in the tires? Do I put gas in the tank? No, because I know what the problem is. I'm not going to spend time working on something that has nothing to do with the problem. The battery's dead. It's powerless. I need power. I lack the means for that power on my own to get the car started. So I go on another investigation of how and where I can find this power. I don't have jumper cables. I don't have any cars to flag down. So I make a decision to call a tow truck. And I take the action of picking up the phone and calling a tow truck. And 3 hours later, a guy shows up, boom, power to the battery. Car starts, and I get results. I did an investigation, made a decision, I took action, I got results. And here's the truth. When you walk in to recovery, you have a problem with alcohol and drugs or both or whatever, but you have no really idea what makes you an alcoholic addict, or therefore you don't know what makes you an alcoholic. You have no idea what an alcoholic addict is, even if you've done everything. And if you don't make an investigation to know what the problem is, you will always look, you always will try different solutions. You have no solution. You're only going to think you know what the problem is, and you will try multiple solutions. The big book has all the information a person needs to go on an investigation. From page, in 48 pages, Bill covers steps 1 and 2. And all the information comes to a head on page 60, and that's where we're at with the ABCs. So why is there 48 pages dedicated to steps 1 and 2? Backed up by, concluding it, backing it up and saying it again with the ABCs, is Bill, he very much wants us to be convinced that we're powerless over alcohol. And he's convinced you need power. And before you can move on to step 3, he wants you to be convinced of that. But what does convinced mean? It means to be completely certain that something is true or real. It also means certain means beyond doubt. So the key element of the ABCs is to be completely certain with no doubt that these facts are true about you. And we must be convinced of each one. Many believe, and at least a lot of confusion, that these are simple beliefs and that they're questions, and that's it. They're not beliefs. They're, a belief is simply acknowledging that something is true. It's a lot different than to be certain that something is true. Beliefs are handed to you. Something you're certain of would have to come from within you. It's not, do I believe I am alcoholic and cannot manage my life? Am I certain? Am I convinced? So there's a big difference, like I said, between the two. So let's look at A. They were alcoholic and could not manage their own lives. I don't know how many times I've heard these read before, thousands of times, before I really even knew what the heck I was talking about. I would just drift off and they were read, but we're alcoholic, could not manage their own lives. From our investigation through this book up to this point, from a good step guide, you will discover that you are alcoholic because you have a physical allergy. That means that the loss of control once you start, and the mental obsession, which is the recurring persistent idea of whatever your choice is, your drug of choice is, that won't respond to reasons why you shouldn't do it. I have a mind that condemns me to drink against my will, and a body condemns me to death. And thanks to this illness concept, it's easy to get full knowledge of your condition and be convinced you're powerless. If one is not convinced, then you need to go back and look at the previous pages again. As for our lives being unmanageable, that's the consequences that have come from having this disease. The obsession, where all of people are ran over because there's no reason that's going to stop me. The insanity of the first drink, even when I don't want it. How about living dry with anger, fear, and resentment, stuff like that, restless, irritable, and discontent. But there's no skipping over any of this. And maybe, there's no free pass. There's no maybe it's a free pass here. We must be convinced the fact that 100% there's no lurking notion that one day I can drink like a normal person. So this very second you say, are you convinced? Yes. Brings us to B, that probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism. Now we're in step 2. No human power means the power is out. Just like my car when I tried to start it, it was dead. Human power has failed you. If it didn't fail you, you wouldn't need this stuff. Meaning you need power. If human power fails, we need power greater than ourselves. And we learned we learned that 4 through 9 is how we seek the power. They like to ask us the how and the where. What do we seek? How we do it, 4 through 9. And where do we find the power? It's not up on the wall somewhere. It's deep down within us. Deep down within us. So if you're not convinced of B, that means you're not convinced of powerlessness 100%. You need to go look at that again. There's no free pass here. As soon as I'm convinced of B, I move on to C. That God could and would if you're sought. And sadly, this is the parrot talk when we hear everyone say at meetings. Everyone barks it out. God could and would if you're sought. Sought is past tense for the word seek, which means to look for, to locate, to discover, or establish. I'm going to establish the existence of something. It's an action word. And C is telling us that God can remove our alcoholism if with the condition that we take action. C is not as easy. It's not an easy one. It's very misunderstood. Lots of people think that C is asking a person, do you believe that God could and would if you're sought? That's not what they're asking you. Are you convinced without a doubt that God could and would if you were sought? That sounds tough. It's not hard to be convinced of A and B because we have evidence. We know what we got. But how can you be convinced that God could and would if you're sought if you've never experienced God? How can you say, I'm convinced? Because they tell us you can't move forward until you are. And how can we be convinced that something can save me if you're not truly capable, you don't truly know it's, what it's truly capable of doing. It's not a fake it till you make it thing. Not standing there until it happens. How do we become convinced? We become convinced that God could and would if you're sought by it's what we've seen happen in other people, the people around. It's that spiritually awoke person that's taking you to the big book. It's that person sitting in front of you at the meeting. Recovery friends that do this work. And obviously from the contents of and written this book by the first 100. And just like the 2 other factors, no free pass. I'm going to read out original manuscript that summarizes this perfectly. It's original manuscript. If you don't know what that is, Bill wrote the book on a piece of paper. He would take it to the committees and they would go over what they would say. And then he would take it to Ruth Hawk, who would type it up, and the manuscript would get edited. And this is one of the things that's edited out in the manuscript. It says, if you are not convinced of these 3 vital issues, you got to reread this book or to this point or throw it away. Wow. So it's saying, if you're not convinced, if you're not beyond doubt on these 3 issues, reread the book or just throw it in the garbage can. We're only going to seek God by being convinced we need God. So that's our investigation, right? So investigation, decision, action, results. So now we're at our decision, right? So I'm going to put up a slide up here. And this is just a little bit more where we're at, right? All this stuff we talked about so far, the first two groups we've had, beliefs in God, God within, and leads us to seeking power. So tonight is where kind of like the rubber meets the road. It's allergy, obsession, problem, powerlessness, willing to believe in the power greater than yourself, solution, find the power 4 through 9, the turning point, decision to seek spiritual change, just 4 through 9. So tonight is like where the rubber meets the road, where we put our foot forward into the program of recovery. So we're making a decision to seek that power so we can truly experience life. And, it's either you're ready or you're not. And that's what it is. I want to experience life. You're ready to, you got to be ready to seek guidance from God so you can be guided into the life of pure peace and joy. I'm going to tell a quick story. One of my favorite stories. I heard this a long time ago, and it goes good with this. So there's this cow that's out grazing in the jungle. I know cows graze in the jungle, but cow's grazing in the jungle, and suddenly this lion comes racing towards her, and she turns and flees, desperately looking, for somewhere to escape to. And she sees this shallow pond, and barely escaping the lion's reach, she jumps in. So does the lion, but it's very shallow and it's mud, like murk mud, and they're up to, the cow and the lion find themselves a short distance apart, up to their necks in mud, but are unable to get free, no matter how much they try. So the lion repeatedly roars at the cow, "I'm going to eat you," and enjoy it. And he thrashes around as much as he can to get loose from the mud, and he becomes worried eventually he can't escape. And the cow watches the lion struggle, kind of stares at him to free himself, and asks him, the lion, "Do you have a master?" And the lion arrogantly goes, "I'm the king of the jungle. Why would I need a master? I myself am my master." And the cow said, "You may be the king of the jungle, but here your power has failed you." "And what about you?" snaps the lion. "You are going to die here in the mud with me." The cow says, "No, I am not." The lion snaps back, "If the king of the jungle cannot be free, how can a stupid old cow?" The cow gently replies and looks at him very gently and says, "I cannot free myself from this mud, but my master can. And when the sun sets and he finds me absent from home, he will come looking for me. And once he finds me, he will raise me up from here and bring me home." The lion fell silent and coldly glared at the cow. And lo and behold, when the sun set, the cow's master arrived. He immediately recognized the cow's dilemma and lifted her to safety. As they walked back home, the cow and the master both felt renewed gratitude for one another. The master said to the cow, "I would have been happy to save the lion if only he would have allowed me to." So the cow represents a surrendered heart. The lion represents our egotistical mind. The master represents, of course, God, and the chase represents life. And the mud represents our struggle with, our struggles with the world around us. The thing about it is it's good to be independent and not rely on anyone else. But what does it get you? But no, you always need a master who will always be on the lookout for you and care for you. What we couldn't do for ourselves. So turning your life over to God does not mean you are weak. It simply means you're stronger with God's help. I want to read a quote. And this quote's by one of the most respected men in the history of the world, who taught moral code, forgiveness, helpfulness to others, devotion, consciousness, Sai Baba. This is what Sai Baba said. This is so right on. "There are countless gurus and mentors in the world, but our Father is the real guru. Others might say good things, but we should never forget our Father's words. In short, love the Father, surrender to him, completely give your life over to him humbly, and then you will see where there's no darkness, only light, wherever you go. I love that. So we're still on page 60. So page 60, being convinced, there's that word again, convinced, without doubt, we're at step 3. So convince those 3 issues, we're now at step 3. So that's a condition, be step 3, be convinced, which is that we decide to turn our will and life over to the care of God as we understood him. So, the actual written 12 step is made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And I'm going to break that down to components and really try to break this down. So we're going to look at 5 different components of step 3. So we have made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So the first one, we'll call it 3A, made a decision. So this is why step 3 is misunderstood, because people believe step 3 is where you train your will and lives for the care of God. Well, if we could do that, this would be a 3-step program, and we would not need, this group would be over tonight. We'll all be saved. But some, that's why some get stuck at step 3. If you could train your life over the care of God, that easy. I mean, come on. But it says made a decision to turn lives over the care of God. A decision is a key part of the human, it's our key part of our human thought process. And it's what do we do in that? We analyze the situation of uncertainty. We like to gather facts so we know exactly which course to take. That's a real decision. Call it like a pre-thought plan prior to moving forward or taking action. Meaning step 3 is only a decision. It's only a thought. And actually you heard the 3 frogs in the log. People have heard this before. Anyone that's been to rehab has heard it. There's 3 frogs in the log. One makes a decision to jump off, harmony or left. And someone will say 2. No, it's 3. One only made a decision to jump. So the most important component of a decision is what? Action. So when a person decides to turn their will life over to the care of God, we must take the necessary action to turn it over. How do we do that? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Until we act on a decision, all we have is a decision. Nothing changes, nothing changes. So the next one, to turn. And this is another one that's very misunderstood, because a turnover means a transfer of control. And that's going to be something we're going to talk about a lot tonight, control. It's a shift in the opposite direction. A person's struggling, and you'll hear them at meetings and they say, I'm struggling, I might lose my kids. I might, I'm going through a divorce. I need to turn that over. This is not turning a single situation over. It's more like a transfer of ownership. Our will and our lives, not a situation. It's not the other side of a coin. Not turning over the coin. The next one's our will and our lives. So this is one of my favorite ones. Our will is our thinking, and our lives is our actions. We're making a decision to turn our thinking and actions over to the care of God. So what do we inventory in step 4? Thinking, resentments, fear, inventory actions, harm, sex, conduct, all that stuff. So we're making a decision to turn our thinking and our actions over to the care of God, or our thinking and actions over to the care of 4 through 9. A lot of people just do that, and like I did. Now that I know I was an atheist, I was agnostic, but I had I ran into God in 6 and 7, had a spiritual experience. The next one, to the care of God, over to the care of God. Think of what care means. It means to look after and tend to the needs of somebody, to care for them, like a caretaker. when my grandmother, fell ill many years ago, she lived, a few hours away. So we had to get a caretaker, and the caretaker was needed because she was incompetent with things and absent, so this person needed to be competent and trustworthy, available, loving, and able to do for her what she couldn't do for herself. That's what a caretaker is. Now put God in there and it becomes endless. It's the caretaker aspect. Competent, trustworthy, available. God is our caregiver of our thinking and interactions. So then we have God as you understood him. Now, this course comes a little bit from Bill's story, where choose your own conception of God. So it means, understand is when your own comprehension of something, and that's what the guy suggests to Bill Ebby. Choose your own conception of God. And then Jimmy Burwell, who was in the Atheist Agnostic Committee when writing the big book, he demanded that they put this in there at the end. Otherwise, they wouldn't sign the book over the bill. They needed like a certain amount of people to sign the publishing over. And God, as you understood him, it means a spiritual power of your own conception rather than another person's. Remember, our beliefs are handed to us. Our understandings are within us, right? Your own personal, comprehension, no matter how limited it is. I mean, my grandfather used to say, if your headlights aren't working all the way and aren't as bright as they should be, you can still make it home. So the big question is, if step 3 is just this decision, when do we turn our lives over to the care of God? I think I already gave it away. If I don't turn my lives over to the care of God in step 3, when does it happen? When the pen hits the papers, and that starts step 4. And the necessary action, we take necessary action to turn our lives over to the care of God. So step 3 is a declaration to action. It's a call to action. Let's look at the next paragraph. The first requirement is to be convinced that any life run software will be a success. So this point of the book, a shift happens from drinking to spiritual, to my friend used to say, to suffering to the answer. And so it shifts. Well, I've taken normies through the book, and this is where I start them off at, right? Any life runs software, doesn't leave anyone out, can hardly be a success. So from this point on, it's all about personality change to bring about recovery, spiritual awakening. What is self-will? Self-will is my unconscious, if I'm unconscious, I'm unaware, my unconscious devotion to my social, security, and sexual needs. And that's the instincts. And we're going to go over that a whole group next week. But self-will is there are misdirected instincts. The book refers to them as self. And when instincts are misdirected, it makes our life unmanageable, way more than alcohol. They drive every resentment, every harm, every fear. There are things like pride, personal relations, self-esteem, material security, emotional security, sex relations, and changes our ambitions. So we're going to get into those more next week, but that's our kind of tiptoe into it. But we're going to look at one more part of it. What is success? Because it says any life runs software will be success. Success is to achieve a goal. So what's the opposite of success? Failure. It means to not achieve a goal. So what he's nicely saying is any life run self-will is failure. Let's go to page 52 and look at the bedevilments. And it's the second paragraph on 52. Second paragraph. Where and about halfway through there it says, we're in trouble with personal relationships. So here's the results of living on misdirected instincts. That's the stuff in the third column of the inventory. The results of living on that stuff. We're unaware of it. What I'm aware of, I can change, I can work on. If I'm not aware of it, it's just going to continue to control me. This is about awareness. Because we're having trouble with personal relationships, failure. We couldn't control emotional nature, failure. We were prey to misery and depression, failure. We couldn't make a living, failure. We had a feeling of uselessness, failure. We were full of fear, failure. we're real help to other people. We're unhappy, failure. We couldn't seem to be a real help to other people, failure. So all these failures are result. It's not us. It's the illusion that we can live life on self-will and run the show ourselves. Any life run on self-will will be a success. And if I stay there, that's what I'm going to get. So I want success, but I don't know. Let's go to page 62 and go even a little deeper down the rabbit hole. So selfish and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. So what is selfishness? Is it taking the last Oreo out of the box? It's more than that, but selfishness is tending mostly to my own needs with little or no concern for others. Self-centeredness is the same thing, concern primarily for my own interests, needs, and well-being. That's it. But it says is the root of our troubles, the root. And our root is the source or origin or the cause of something, right? I'm going to put up another slide, of course. This is one of my favorite ones. All right. So it's a cool tree. It's not the best picture in the world, but it's a good tree. Nice tree. But that's what we see on the surface is a tree. It's what's underground that tells the tree's story. First thing to notice is the roots are bigger than the tree. Now, I'm going to change perspectives and look at the tree from a different angle. What everyone sees on the surface, the tree represents alcohol, right? What people see on the surface. But it's just a symptom. They just see the surface as a symptom or a problem. It's just a symptom. And a symptom's an indicator to a disease or disorder, right? It's what's underneath that tells our story. Because what happens is it's what's underneath that tells our story. All the stuff that we've, from our past, that accumulated running on self-will. And so what happens is I decide I'm alcoholic, I'm going to eliminate alcohol, and I go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that tree that everybody sees gets chopped down. They don't see the stuff underneath me, but the longer I'm crazy, the more people start to see it. If I chop down that tree, and this is me sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous, wondering why I'm not getting happy like everyone else is. I mean, look at these things. All the instincts, personal relations, high self-esteem, resentment, hate, dishonesty, frightened, misery, selfishness, self-pity, guilt, restless, irritable, discontent, obsession, remorse. That's our battle right there. You see the real problem here? We're going to all these, fellowship groups, whether it be AA or wherever else you go, CA or wherever. And all we do is eliminate the symptom. The roots are still there. And what happens, take a minute, think about it. I mean, if I hire, someone to come in my backyard, Jason to come in my backyard to cut down the weeds, and he uses a weed whacker, they all grow back. My dad used to yell at me, I was like, get rid of the root. I hated that. I used to get mad. So it's like, but I mean, look at the misery and chaos. You see what all the instincts are in there. High self-esteem causes resentment and all that. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And but there can be new life. There can be life again. But that's because the roots never were taken out. It will come back up again. That's how easy it happens. And the tree kind of looks kind of weird. Trees will come back if you don't get rid of the roots. This will help you get rid of root and branch. That's what we're trying to do here. Root and branch. I don't want to live that way anymore. I don't want to stay that way anymore. So it says driven by 100 forms of fear. 100 forms. That's a lot of forms of fear. 100 forms of self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. So wait a minute, they step on our toes and they retaliate and they hurt us and we're mad at them. So we're driven by fear. We know, fear is this basic survival mechanism that we need, but if left unattended, can lead to, anxiety, tension, distress. And, self-delusion is this erroneous belief that is held despite evidence to the contrary. I have evidence that goes against it, but I'm going to hold on to the beliefs. That's self-delusion. Believing something isn't true that I know is. Self-seeking is selfishness in action. So if have a resentment against Billy and I hold on it for weeks, he doesn't know I have it, but I go kick his door in and start yelling at him and calling all these names, well, then it's self-seeking. I took selfishness and I took action that's a harm. Self-pity, Bill Wilson calls it the bitter morales of self-pity. The bitter morales of self-pity. Because it's the ultimate aspect that you're alone. Because there's so many people, it's when you run out of people to resent, and there's only one person left to resent. How many toes did you step on? Look what it says about those people. Sometimes they hurt us, but soon without provocation, we find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, on those instincts, decisions based on pride, on self-esteem, low self-esteem, whatever it is, on money, which later places us in a position to be hurt. That's the instincts in collision. Two people that are both trying to get the same thing. It's all over the big book. Then 12 and 12 mentions it. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. See, I was convinced that my life and my troubles were somebody else's making. It's yours, it's yours, it's yours. And when you see that your troubles are your making, that's hope. I'll tell you something though. I was around I never got more than 3 months or past the third step, but I was around long enough to start to realize that I heard these rumblings that in step 4 is where you find out you're to blame, and I would be, oh, hell no. I still got people to prove wrong. That's why I ran from it, just so I could be right. And then I remember my first thing out of my sponsors, Matt, one of the first things in my 5th step, I think third item, he said, do you want to be right or do you want to be free? But that's hope when you see that your problems have your own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme case of self-will run right. That's instincts run right, though he usually doesn't think so. So, what happens when there's a riot? It's outbursts, it's mayhem, chaos, destruction, violence, buildings get destroyed, conflict. When something runs riot, it means it's out of control. You're out of control. That's what they're saying there. Above everything, we alcoholics must rid ourselves of this selfishness. Why do we need to do that? Look what it says. We must, or it kills us. I thought booze is what kills us. I thought drugs kills us. It's telling us a different story here. A totally different story. Pretty deep. We see it from the root that it's definitely not alcohol. Even though we have a mental obsession and physical allergy, but how can I even treat it? If I try to treat it with that, I get the double-edged sword of the allergy. Go to a meeting and say booze doesn't kill us, selfishness does. And, see some of the meetings around here, they'll tell you to leave. I'm not kidding. Or they'll make you feel like you need to leave. So we're fixated on the symptom. We need to get rid of the cause. And you always have a symptom that will always keep reappearing until you get rid of the cause. Look what it says. It says, God makes that possible. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. It often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self, as the instincts again, without his aid. So one thing I want to point out to you is complete is a word that's all over the book. Entire psychic change, complete psychic change, wholeness of this, the circle, complete. Rigorous honesty, complete, entirely. There's no way of completely getting rid of self without his aid, the missing piece of the puzzle. We might be able to get rid of some of self But to completely get rid of it, there's no way without God. Completely get rid of self without his aid. So, all the joy you ever experience is when you're not relying on self. And all the pain you experience is when you're relying on self. I never had pain in my life relying on God. If we get rid of self, what state would we be in? The complete state of joy, complete. What is this about? Are they a method to get rid of alcoholism? No, it's a method to completely get rid of self. So we must die of self. By dying, we're born in eternal life. Just saying. Many of us have made moral and philosophical conventions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we'd like to. Of course we did. Neither could we wish to reduce our self-centered so much to trying our own power. We had to have God's help. So I got another lion story real quick. There's this old lion, and he's cruising through the countryside, and he can't really move the way he used to. He's pretty old and broken down, and he sees sheep, and he goes, I can catch a sheep. And he runs to him, and he falls and down the hill, and he rolls and scares them all away. But there's one in the middle of the sheep's herd, there's a lion. And the old lion's like, what the heck? And he walks up, he goes, why didn't you eat those sheep yourself? And the lion that was with the sheep goes, bah. And he goes, what? And he goes, what did you say to me? And the young lion goes, bah. And he goes, wait a minute, you're a lion. He goes, no, I'm a sheep, bah. And the old lion with a smile on his face goes, follow me, come and follow me. And he takes him down to this crystal clear lake. I mean, you can see everything in there. And the old lion looks in the lake, and its reflection is crystal clear. He says, the young lion, what do you see? He goes, I see you in the water. And he goes, now you look in the water. And the young lion looks in the water, and he jumps back, and he goes, what did you see? I saw you again. He goes, look closer. And he sees him, and he paws the water, and he comes in the realization of what he truly is, a lion. And he goes, I'm a lion, and he runs off. The moral to the story is, physically, did anything change? No. What happened to him, he came into awareness of what he truly was inside. He awoke into what he was inside. So let's go down to this part. This is the how and why of it. First off, I love that. First off, we got to quit playing God. It doesn't work. Playing God is behaving in the selfish manner of imposing superiority of power by trying to control others in situations. We've done that. It's also about trying to arrange things, controlling things. Next, we decided hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. Remember, we remember earlier in the book, we were, the actor who thought he was the director. So we got a new director. The director, his direction, God's direction. So the director's duty is to give directions and manage. Who's been your director? He is the principal and we are the agents. His will, his thinking. The principal is, remember the principal was that guy in school we all liked. The principal was the guy that, he went to the principal's office, you're in trouble, right? But the principal is this individual with the highest authority, most important position or rank. He's saying that God is the principal and we are his agents. God is in charge and we are his agent. And what's an agent? Is an individual that represents a group. So if I'm an agent of, they're saying I'm an agent of God. How well, if you are an agent of God, how well have you represented the company? How well have you represented God? Look what it says next. He is the Father and we are his children. It's all are one. That's talking about God's unconditional love. If something's unconditional, it's absolute, not subject to conditions. Unconditional love is not the subject of any conditions. It's beyond words, beyond limitations, beyond our minds. But it's inside of us. It's loving all. Some people call that agape love. It's a type of love that's not based on a person's worthiness to be loved. And it's most of all, it's the healing power. And it can affect anyone you encounter. And there's ways for us to give it away. And we strip away all the BS and everything we think we are and all this ego we have. You find out that love is all you really are. And it's waiting to come out and flow into the world. And then when you love all, you have no enemies. Love all no matter what. Because most good ideas are simple, and this concept was a keystone of a new and triumphant arch, which we passed to freedom. Freedom's a powerful word. Not everybody likes a free person, especially in the spiritual realm. Freedom is the capacity to live life without restraints or restrictions. Do you want freedom from self? Freedom is a result of the demolishing of self. Freedom from self is the answer. Then you can live life without limitations. Limitless. Limitless. I'm going to put up another slide. So last week, 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, because we had a meeting last week, we talked about step one. We talked to the foundation. And the foundation is, the base of the entire building, right? It's the purpose is to hold up the walls, the roofs, it supports the weight of the building, it anchors everything together. It's built to last forever. The reason step one is the foundation is because step one is the only step you must do 100%, right? Convinced that you are powerless, no lurking notions at all. And that's the willingness foundation. And it brings us to the cornerstone, step two. We have the cornerstone, and that's the first stone laid into and at the corner of the building. 2 walls begin to link the foundation together. It's the first part. It's kind of like the first part of a new building that you see. Our cornerstone is being willing to believe in a power greater than us. Now it calls us a spiritual structure, it calls it an arch. So what is an arch? It's kind of like an upside down U, right? And it's forming an entrance that spans an opening. And that's what it looks like, right? It has a series of, these wedge-shaped blocks. Those blocks are called vassoirs. And these blocks are cut, each block is cut firmly and exactly to connect to the surface of the other blocks, the neighboring blocks. The central of the vassoir, the simple top of it, the summit, they call the keystone. That's step 3. Interesting how it jumps all the way to the top, right? What does that say about step 3? So it's the heaviest stone, it's usually made of marble. And the role of the keystone is they would drop it down and it would lock everything in place. Well, what happens if you remove it? Falls over, right? The coolest thing about this is we never start building this arch, more will be revealed. As we go through this book and to this workshop, we're going to see each stone, right? And where does that lead us to? It's a new and triumphant arch with which we can pass to freedom. We must take action. We must tear down the walls that block us. We built walls. We need to tear down those walls that block us. So those walls do not come down without effort. We must tear them down and examine each wall we knock down brick by brick, piece by piece, why we had them. And so we can know what they're built out there. And perhaps it's those very walls that are the pieces of them is what maybe builds this arch. Self-examination is the key. Inventory is the key. So we can free our minds what blocks us, so we can let go and make right with others. And what you're discovering, what we discover then is a world that has no walls, called the world of the spirit. No walls. It's a broad highway. More will be revealed on that as this group goes on, the archway. Top of page 63. These are the promises, I like to say, beyond step 3. Some people say the third step promises, but it doesn't happen like that way for everyone. But it says, when we sincerely, what sincerely mean? Honestly, Honesty is the awareness of where I'm at. Do I have resentment? Do I have fear? Am I making the right decision? When we sincerely took such a position, that position is what? God first. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. So if we have a new employer, what about what happened to the old one? It didn't work very well. But what does an employer do is they pay you for the work you do. Well, this new employer pays really well if you do the work. And one thing I've learned after 22 years in this is you either get paid spiritually or you pay the price. And I paid the price before. Being all powerful, that's a big thing there, being all powerful. He provided what we needed. So it's saying he's all powerful and he provides what we needed. Here's the condition. If we keep close to him and perform his work well. Let's break that down. God provides what we needed if we keep close to him from his work well. Two conditions. The first condition, if we keep close to him. How do we keep close to God? Well, God's within us. I do 4 through 9 to remove those blocks. That's the first part. I stay close to God. And then when I stay that way, I do step 10, which is 4 through 9 and step 10. And I do step 11. So how to keep close to God? 4 through 9 to step 10 or 4 through 9, whatever you want to call it, and step 11. The 12 and 12 says when 10 and 11 are together, we have an unshakable foundation for life. We just mentioned the foundation a minute ago. The second condition is to performers work well. Page 77 says our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be maximum service to God and the people about us. Maximum service to God and the people about us. How do we fit ourselves to be maximum service to God? Again, 4 through 9. But what does maximum mean? The greatest and largest amount possible. Maximum service, the greatest service, services to help and assistance of others. The greatest, what could be this greatest service we can do? Sponsoring. The ultimate service is sponsoring others to this program. Plus, we help others around us too. We're altruistic. That's sponsoring is doing God's work. If we meet those two conditions, God will provide for us. Think a provider gives you something that you do not have. If you don't have food, the provider brings you food. If you don't have love, the provider brings you love. If you don't have happiness, the provider brings you happiness. So provider gives you something you don't have. And so what it's saying here is simple. We put God first, staying close to him, other seconds, doing his work, our needs get met. God first, other second, our needs get met. Very simple. So I live God first, other second, my needs get met. Look what happens to us. Something we never thought we would have, established on such a footing. How do you get established for something? First of all, how do you get established? You put time and effort into it, energy. You build something, right? Establish such a footing, become less and less interested ourselves, our little plans and designs. Others he calls them little plans. More and more, we become interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. So instead of being selfishness and self-centeredness, the process of altruism takes a hold of you. You're other-centered, helping others. As you felt new power flow in, new power, not the old one, not recycled, new power. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind. Is there anyone here who does not want peace of mind? As we discovered we could face life successfully. Quite opposite of any life on himself will require to be a success, right? As we became conscious of his presence, that's a deep awareness that God is real, the Gnostic, the knowing. And look at this. We begin to lose our fear of today. We begin to lose our fear of tomorrow. We begin to lose our fear of the hereafter. Hereafter is what hasn't happened yet. We begin to lose our fear of the future. We were reborn. Reborn. Born into the awareness of what you are and what you've always been, God consciousness. Look at the guarantee. Reborn is more than a second chance. It's to have a brand new beginning. It's to have a new life brought back to life. Brought back to life. This is not about leaving life, it's rejoining life. Another word for reborn is conversion. And that's the adoption of a new belief system towards God that completely differs from any old belief systems you had. And that leads to change in character and wholeness. Same thing as spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, entire psychic change. So before we break down the third step prayer, I want to read a sentence right after the third step prayer. It says, we thought well. But one thing I want to mention is we're gonna, when we conclude tonight, we're all gonna, who wants to stick around, we're all gonna do an individual third step prayer. We thought well before taking the step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. So people think abandon means to leave something behind, like, abandon ship, withdraw from something. We're not running away here from anything. We're not running away in this abandonment. We're referring to about abandoning ourselves to God. Abandonment also means to give up control. Control. Perhaps our greatest struggle in life has been with control. Our parents controlled us at one point. Our schools controlled us. Our teachers controlled us. Our sports coaches, baseball, football coaches, whoever they were, controlled us. Our first job we had controlled us. Maybe our relationships we had. And how many times do we have trouble with parents, teachers, coaches, and bosses? Why? Over control. Battles for control. Yeah, I mean, I look at the failed relationships I had with beautiful women, inside. And I was boom, because it was always a battle for control. And after years of fighting for control, who gets it? We wind up on our own, and I don't want to give up control. I got it. Go to page 59. We heard this a million times at meetings. And it's going to say on 59, half measures avail us nothing. We stood at a turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. That's the turning point. Let's see what the turning point looks like. Go to 53. This is what the turning point looks like. So the turning point is his care of complete abandon. Here's what it looks like. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, it's not my parents' fault, it's not my upbringing, it's not the teacher's fault, self-imposed crisis. We could not postpone or evade. We had to fiercely face the proposition that either God is everything or else he's nothing. There's no middle road there. There's no, I'll wait around until it happens. God either is or isn't. What is our choice to be? Here's the thing. If you are a real alcoholic, faced with the steps, there will come a time when we reach this turning point where we must abandon ourselves to God or else. They're not talking about us giving up some control or a little control. We don't take some of our control and put it away for a rainy day. Talking about giving all control to God. And I was talking to a guy today how we forget how we came in here bleeding and dying. You take a person that, let's say, has cancer, and they tell them, if you got to follow these things for 3 years and you do it every day, you won't have cancer. And I see alcoholics all the time take it towards that and just fade away from it. A year, 6 months into it. But other than abandon, there's another word in that statement that is powerful. It's the word utterly. Utterly means completely without question. Without question. Since abandonment means to give up control, utterly means completely without question. Let's reread that statement one more time, but with different words. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we're ready, that we could at last give up control completely and without question to him. So that sounds scary, but you get the point. If you want this, you need to give control over without question. Why? Because what legs do we have to stand on? What proof can I give out that, if you disagree with, giving all the control to God, How successful have you been with controlling your life, running your life, managing your life? I mean, ask yourself, can you control resentment, fear, and guilt, or does it control you? Can you control pride or personal relations or sex, sex conduct, money, high self-esteem, or does it control you? Can you control, that high anxiety, easily pissed off and never satisfied, restless, irritable, discontent, or does it control you? Can you control alcohol or drugs, or does it control you? So that's the earmarks of the unmanageable life. You ever seen the old wrestlers and stuff? I mean, the old amateur wrestlers, and they got cauliflower ears. That's the earmarks of getting your head smashed in. These are the earmarks of the unmanageable life. All those things are not controlling. A failure at controlling our life. Any life run self-worth, high success. Freedom is the answer. Transformation must occur. But one big problem is most people only turn to God when they're afraid or overwhelmed. They want a 911 God rather than a 411 God. My grandma used to always say there's no atheists in foxholes. Is that one who relies on God? Only going to God when things are bad? God is about getting strength, inspiration, guidance, direction, because we don't have it. It's about giving life over to him so I can have strength, guidance, inspiration, direction. If I struggle right now with strength, inspiration, guidance, and direction, because you're trying to do it yourself. Turning our life over to God, over the care of God, is a transfer of control. I'm not in control of my life anymore. I take action. I do the best I can with it, at least. That's the best I can do. I got a stupid fly flying in my face. But we must always unite prayer with action. Always. My grandma also used to say, if you're going to pray, if you pray for potatoes, you better start digging. Go to 64. Let's see what that means exactly. Prayer with action. Prayer with action. A lot of people call it scientific prayer. Though our decision, step 3, was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect. Here's a condition: unless at once, right away, followed by a strenuous effort. 4, to face. 5, and to be rid of. 6 and 7, the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Blocking us from what? Blocking us from God. That's the 3rd step warning. I used to know this guy in AA. He passed away years ago. He had a really graggly voice, and he was scary as hell. Beautiful guy, though. And he would say, the ditch between 3 and 4 is filled with dead bones of alcoholics. And he was right, 100%. A lot of people, make this decision and never take action. Let's look at this prayer. It says, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. So offer is an expression of readiness to do or give something, right? Offering, right? Thee is a singular pronunciation of the word you. And build means to construct. So here again, it's talking about building something. So down the street from my house, they put up one day, also this fence appeared around this old restaurant. And that we heard a new pizza parlor coming in. And before they built it, they put the fence, they put a tarp around the building and said Skimple's Pizza's coming soon. Right. Then all of a sudden, where I live, they work at night. You hear this pounding and banging, and on the inside, you can't really see what's going on there, but they're smashing stuff up. As they tore down the old building, trucks would go in and haul away the rubble to make room for something new. You see, destruction must take place before construction. And you can begin a new building. We're the same way. When you turn your life over to the care of God, you have to go through a period of destruction, tearing down 4 and 5, and then removal of that stuff, 6 and 7, right? And then a period of construction, rebuilding, 9, 10, 11, 12. Thou means singular for you. Wilt means will, not Will Smith, but will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I might better do thy will. So this is deep right here. Relieve means to reduce or remove pain, suffering, misery. So relief comes from a Latin word, which means to help, to ease something away. An ice pack relieves pain, right? Bondage is a state of being a slave, incarcerated. Self is one's essential drives, instincts, pride, self-esteem. So there's nothing more profound than seeing a person living on those instincts, relieving the bondage of pride, relieving the bondage of self-esteem, relieving the bondage of high self-esteem, relieving the bondage of money, sex, whatever it is. There's nothing more profound than seeing a person lost in the bondage of self, miserable, suicidal, dying in pain, frustration, despair, and suddenly you see them and it's like magic. They're a different person. It's like someone snapped the fingers. Who snapped the fingers? It says, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may witness those that help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Difficulties is the condition of being troubled and challenged. Almost like a victim. Take away my victimhood. Take it away. There's no recovery from being a victim. That's what they're saying there. If you're going to be a victim, then you're not doing the third step prayer, right? The condition is, it's being troubled and challenged. Our difficulties are the cause of those difficulties is defects of character stand in my way of maximum service to God and people about me. We know what victory is. It's the opposite. It's success against those great difficulties that are obstacles. I love the bear witness, to see the proof, to see evidence, to see the truth. Thy means pronunciation of your. Help is to offer service. Power, that's the ability to direct the course of events, to make something happen. Eternal strength from the spirit within. Love, unconditional love, deep affection without any limitations, condition, or judgment. Thy way of life. It's the manner in which we live. And I want to say this, there's a difference between my life and my living. My living is what I do outside of me. Maybe I make money in that. My life is what I do inside of me. And I always thought that if my living is in order, everything's going to be great and my pain will go away. I thought if everything out here is good, my pain inside will go away. The truth is, when I got my life in order, my living got better. So many people think they need to go, I got to get this great job and make all this money, and it overrides their recovery. And then the quality of their life recovery goes downhill. We must get our lives together. And it says, may I do always, may I do thy will always, forever, infinity, the circle and the triangle. Circle never ends. Infinity, may I do thy will always. There's two parts to prayer, the petition and the action. The petition is a request sent to the authority. When you seek the action of 439 after step 3, you will discover that your will and life is in God's hands now. Every time I've done a genuine third step prayer and followed up with that with inventory, think of it like this. It's a great way to put it. Let's say step 3 is this big, huge wooden door, like an archway door, big, huge door. It's closed, right? I do a prayer to open this door. 4 and 5 opens the door. And when I do 6 and 7, I walk inside. Think of that. I open the door, I walk inside. And when I walk inside, it's the world of the spirit. Step 3 is our oath. It's about commitment. And commitment is the promise to completely dedicate yourself to something. It's committing your life, your whole life, over to the care of God. Your commitment is steps 4 through 9. Completely giving yourself to this simple program is commitment. Commitment is more than words. It's not something you try to abandon. There's no days off. It's about complete dedication. It's when action speaks louder than words. People say, I can't do it all the time, but we dedicated yourself to alcohol. You were committed to drinking. You know, it's when your actions speak louder than words. It's when you selfishly make sacrifices. It's sticking to something even when times are tough. It's making the time when there is none. Giving your time to hear another person's story. It's, you know, it's investing yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally, and you can balance that by doing the steps. So not only the steps help us with just crap outside of us, to help us so we can be better sponsors, we can be better people. But so I guess what I'm saying is commitment is the stuff character is made of. You know, it's being there and putting time, energy into it, year after year, day after day. You know, it's making your life. Like I said, there's no days off. It's not making it may not be easy, but it makes life easier. And if we don't stay committed, we're doomed. Most don't stay committed. And they wind up committed, literally, you know. But we believe in the power because we see it works in other people, and we make this decision. To see, seeking that power, we seek it or we don't. And this decision is actually more than just turning our will and life over to God. It's a dedication between life and death. So we can seek out life, or we can go back to death, and that's a cycle of drinking, being stuck in that allergy over and over again every day. You may never make it out. It said on page 44, to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always the easy alternatives to face. So we take the easy way out, or we can take the harder road of seeking God. There's two roads to this freedom. One's an easier road where the only reward is it's easier, and there's a harder road where the reward is freedom. So one more story. One more story I want to tell you guys. I wasn't going to tell this one, but I got it now that So there's this guy, and he's lost in the desert. After wandering around for days and nearly dead, he's totally dehydrated. He's dying, and he's like crawling, and he sees a swimming pool, but it's a mirage. He sees water, it's a mirage. He keeps dragging. All of a sudden, he sees in the distance, he sees a shack. And he's, thinking maybe it won't be a mirage. He crawls and crawls so he gets there, and it's real. And he arrives at the shack. He goes inside and finds a water pump. And he instantly starts pumping frantically. No water comes out. He's frustrated and tired. He collapses. This is it. And while laying on the floor, he sees 6 empty water jugs. And next to them is a smaller jug with water inside, with a note attached to it. The note reads, pour all the water into the top of the pump to prime it. If you do this, you will get all the water you need, but please do not forget to fill the bottle when you're done. Our friend now is faced with a decision. Should he follow these instructions? That must work because there's other, notes there. People signed it and stuff. Does he trust the note and pour all the water into the pump and have all the water he needs? Or does he drink the one glass of water he has to save himself now? Should I risk it? If I pour all the water into the pump, it may not work. It may never work. I may not see. I might die. But what about the pump? If it doesn't work, the note could be incorrect. The man decides the way to go was a leap of faith. With his hands trembling, he grabs the water and he pours it into the pump. He closes his eyes and says a prayer before he pumps. He starts pumping, and he pumps harder, and he's almost passing out. It's not working. He's crying, please work, please. And all of a sudden it makes this gurgling sound. The whole shack shakes and water comes out. He laid under that pump and drank that water for, 7 or 8 minutes, filled up his belly. Then he filled up the 6 empty jugs. And then laying on his back he discovered there was a map of the region. And what he discovered was that he had exactly those 6 jugs, exactly the right amount of water he needed to get there. So he would have died if he did it the other way. But there was no fear because now he had enough water. And he filled up the original bottle, put the cork in it, and the original note, he picked up the pencil and he added a new line under the instructions. Believe it works. So we've been faced with a situation similar to that, where there's only 2 options, life or death, where one was uncertainty whether life choice, whether this is going to work, or we take the easy way out in death and the cycle of drinking. All of us here have made a decision to seek, this journey based on the promise of another. Think about it. If it's in the big book, it's the promise of another. It's the sponsor, promise of another. After we made that decision, we inspire others by telling them, believe it works. Close your eyes for a second, and we'll do a quick meditation, and we'll do the prayer. So when you're at the end of your rope, you got nowhere to go. Who do you call it for? When your back's up against the wall, who do you call it for? Human power fails you. Who do you call for? When you're hopeless, who do you call for? When you are powerless, who do you call for? Seeking God is life's deepest and greatest journey, the journey of all journeys. This divine is in our hearts, in every single person here, and everywhere around us. That's why it's universal consciousness. Everyone has it. God answers all those who seek him. Are we willing to seek? And know that by seeking God, you're relinquishing your role, not to play God anymore. You are not God. You can have any God you want, as long as it's not you. Meaning the world no longer revolves around you anymore. You are there to guide the people around you. You're going to let God dictate your life. You're going to give him your pain, all your pain, over to him. You don't want to feel it anymore. And when that happens, we experience transformation that leads to uncharted, unmarked territories. It's a transformation of our thinking that leads to peace of mind and joy. We need to give ourselves to God, and we will give him to you. He will give himself to you. Are you willing to seek a new life? All you have to do is ask for it. Many are called, except few accept it. What's your decision? I ask you these questions. Are you convinced you're alcoholic? Are you convinced? Are you convinced you cannot manage your own life? Are you convinced that human power cannot, are you convinced that human power cannot relieve your alcoholism? Are you convinced that God could and would if you were sought? Are you convinced that any life on self-work will be a success? Are you convinced you need to quit playing God? Are you convinced you cannot get rid of self without his aid? Are you ready to give up control? Are you ready to abandon yourselves utterly to him, completely to God? Are you ready to take the necessary action to turn your whole life over to the care of God, as you understand him or as you don't understand him? our whole life, we hope one day, somehow, God would intervene. But he already has. We're still here. When I did my third step prayer the first time, my grand sponsor said, today is the first day of the rest of your life. So I'm going to stop the recording because I'm not going to record us doing the